I'd never given the hallway much thought. It was just a hallway, dim, narrow, quiet in a way that made sound feel swallowed, like the air itself didn't want to carry it forward. I passed through it every day without noticing, my eyes fixed on the floor, my steps quick, doors clicking shut behind me. Nothing ever happened there. It was ordinary, safe and unremarkable. That all changed the night I noticed it. Something in the shadows at the far end of the hall caught my eye. Subtle at first, like a trick of the light, but once my brain labeled it, it refused to let go. Every time I walked past that stretch of floor, I felt the same pull, the same uneasy weight pressing at the edge of my vision. Woke up thirsty one night, groggy and half asleep, dragging my feet toward the kitchen. The hallway stretched out before me, familiar yet strange. Halfway down, I stopped. Something about the way the shadows clung to the floor, thick, smudged, and almost liquid, made my skin prickle. At the far end of the hallway, where the darkness pulled the heaviest, a shape waited. It wasn't moving, yet it filled the space with a presence that made my heart hammer. I blinked, hoping my eyes were lying, but the figure remained, tall and unnervingly still, and silent in a way that felt deliberate, almost knowing. I rubbed my eyes, telling myself it was just fatigue, just stress, just my imagination running wild in the dark. But when I looked again, it hadn't budged. Its stillness carried a weight, a knowing. I felt observed and examined, like the hallway had been waiting for someone to notice, and now it had me. Shakily, I reached for the light switch. My hand trembled, a low hum of panic thrumming in my chest. The hallway flickered to life, and in the instant of brightness, the figure was gone. The shadows retreated to their corners as if nothing had ever been there. The hallway looked ordinary again. Bare walls, clean floors, every detail as mundane as always. It was almost laughable how nothing seemed out of place, but the relief was hollow, as if the calmness was just a mask hiding something worse. Even with the lights on, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The crawling awareness at the back of my neck, the prickling hairs, the certain knowledge that unseen eyes were boring into me. It lingered long after I forced myself back to bed. I tried to reason it away. Sleep deprivation, stress, exhaustion, the kind of mental chatter that whispers excuses to keep you sane. Yet the goosebumps refused to vanish. Logic couldn't reach the tension in my bones, the cold dread that had taken root. That night I did something I'd never done before, not just shutting my eyes or pulling the covers tight. I closed the door to my bedroom, latching it carefully and deliberately, and when the click of the latch echoed, I realized the shift. The hallway wasn't just a stretch of walls and light anymore. It was watching back. The darkness outside my door seemed heavier, dense and almost tangible, like it had weight and patience. It waited for me to blink, to breathe, to let my guard down. I lay on the bed, heart thudding, imagining it stretching across the hallway, lingering in the corners where my mind couldn't see clearly. And I knew, even as I tried to will myself to sleep, that nothing had truly disappeared. The hallway had changed. It had gained something, awareness and hunger. I wasn't just passing through it anymore. I was part of it, and it was part of me. The next night, I tried not to think about the hallway. Don't look, don't think. But the harder I tried, the more my eyes betrayed me. The darkness at the far end seemed to pull my attention like gravity, a subtle tug I couldn't resist. And there it was, the same dark shape, unmoving yet alive in some way I couldn't name. It was patient, watching and waiting. Its presence filled the hall with a weight I could feel pressing on my chest, a slow, steady pressure that made breathing just slightly more difficult. It hadn't moved closer, not yet, but it hadn't left either. Every night I returned to the hall, the figure remained at the far end, a constant anchor of dread that refused to be ignored. Its stillness somehow made it feel larger and more powerful, as though space itself was bending around it. The hallway no longer felt like part of my apartment. It belonged to something else entirely. The walls pressed in differently, and the shadows thickened unnaturally. The ordinary air felt borrowed, like I was trespassing in someone else's domain. Night after night I stole glances that I swore I wouldn't. Each night the shape seemed slightly sharper and more defined, like it was slowly revealing itself, measuring me in return. I couldn't tell if it wanted something or if it merely existed to remind me I wasn't alone. It was impossibly tall, nearly scraping the ceiling. It was too large for the space, like it had stretched itself to fit, or like the hallway had expanded to accommodate it. Its height made the shadows above seem alive, tangled with its presence and dripping down the walls like ink. Even when it didn't move, I felt movement. Tiny shifts when I blinked, subtle adjustments that defied explanation. The second I looked away, it seemed to inch closer, a creeping awareness that existed just outside my perception. I tried leaving the lights on, every lamp, every fixture, burning bright. It didn't matter. The figure remained, looming even more sharply in contrast to the light. If anything, the brightness made it more conspicuous, impossible to ignore, reminding me of its presence in a way darkness never could. One night, desperate for safety, I dragged a blanket to the couch. The living room should have felt secure, open, and safe, but instead, the hallway's weight pressed in on me like a tangible force. Even from this distance, I could feel its eyes, or the sense of them, following my every move. That's when it began to make itself known in ways that were harder to ignore. Breath, heavy, uneven, and alive, echoed along the narrow hall, filling it as if the space itself had a pulse. I could hear them and feel them, and somehow the air around me thickened with menace. Other nights were worse. I would wake suddenly, the blanket tangled around me, and see my bedroom door ajar, just slightly, just enough to glimpse the hall beyond. The tilt was deliberate and unnatural, as though the doorway itself was leaning in toward the darkness. The door always faced the shadows, always. Even in the small crack, I could feel its orientation, a subtle, silent alignment with the figure that had claimed the hallway. Each night I wondered if the door was keeping me in, or if it was trying to show me the shape of things to come. And every time I looked through that crack, it was there, facing me, waiting, patient and still, and somehow intimately aware that I had seen it, and that I would never look away. I tried to avoid the hallway. I pretended it wasn't there and kept my gaze down and practically ran. But in an apartment, you can't avoid it forever. Every trip to the kitchen, every late night bathroom run, I had to pass through it. And it waited, patient, at the edge of my vision. The worst part hit one night when I realized something was wrong. The hallway was longer than it should have been. My apartment barely spanned 800 square feet, yet the passage seemed to stretch endlessly before me, like it belonged to somewhere else entirely. The far wall drifted further away with every night, and the figure grew with it, filling the distance, its shadow expanding as though it were feeding on the hallway itself. The space warped around it, mocking my perception and defying reason. I forced myself to take a step forward, willing the floor beneath me to remain steady, but the end of the hall pulled away, stretching and distorting. The wall seemed alive, a slow pulsing movement that made the air heavy, thick, and almost wet. Sometimes I thought the walls were breathing, rising and falling in subtle swells. Shadows pooled and thinned in unnatural patterns, twisting with a rhythm that didn't belong. And at the center of it all, anchored like a dark monolith, was the figure. It had no face, only a hollow black void where one should have been. But that emptiness wasn't neutral. I could feel its awareness. It was looking, measuring, and waiting. Every nerve ending in my body screamed that it saw me even when I thought I was hidden in shadow. The air grew colder, unnaturally so. Not a simple draft, but a deep, seeping chill that seemed to leach warmth from the walls themselves. Each night it crept closer, gnawing at the comfort of the apartment and filling it with something alien and oppressive. And the figure remained at the center, impossibly tall, impossibly still, a black presence in a hall that no longer obeyed the rules of reality. I wanted to run. I wanted to shut my eyes and pretend it wasn't there, but every sense told me that pretending wasn't enough. The hallway didn't feel like my home anymore. It was a threshold, a door to something else, something patient, waiting, and far older than I could imagine. The kind of presence that doesn't just wait for you, it waits with you. I never stepped forward, never crossed the threshold it seemed to offer, because deep down I knew the truth. If I took that step, I wouldn't return. Not to my apartment, not to my life, not to the safety I had once taken for granted. Each night I lingered on the edge of the hall, forcing myself to move, to breathe, to survive. And every time I did, the figure watched, unchanged and patient. It didn't need to chase me. I was already exactly where it wanted me, trapped between fear and impossibility. So I waited, and I watched, and the hallway stretched on, alive and endless, a corridor that belonged to something else entirely. And the figure, always there, always patient, and always waiting for me to finally step. The first time it moved, I nearly screamed. My heart thudded like a hammer, my body frozen in place, and every nerve ending screaming that I was in danger. The hallway felt alive, stretching and twisting in ways that made no sense. I woke up in the middle of the night, parched, and headed for the kitchen. Half asleep and dragging my feet, I froze again. There it was, the shape in the hallway, dark, tall, still, and waiting. But this time, it wasn't at the far end. The distance between us had shrunk. My stomach clenched. I could almost feel its attention settling on me, measuring me and deciding. It was closer, much closer than the night before, and somehow, impossibly, the hallway seemed to bend toward it, shortening with each blink of my eyes. My blood turned to ice, my muscles locked, and even breathing felt impossible. I wanted to look away, to run and hide, but I couldn't. Something in me demanded I watch it, and measure it, and acknowledge it. It didn't walk, it didn't step, it shifted, smoothly, impossibly like a shadow sliding across walls, moving without effort or sound. Each motion defied the laws of my reality. Every time I blinked, it crept closer. The hallway shortened with each flicker of my eyelids. First, halfway down, then just beside the bathroom door. Every moment I looked away, it advanced, inching nearer with impossible patience. Closer and closer. It was almost at my bedroom door before I even realized it. The air thickened, pressing against my chest and making it difficult to think. The shadows weren't just behind it, they were around it, filling the hall. I lunged forward, slamming the bedroom door shut. With my hand shaking, I fumbled with the lock. The click echoed in the stillness, and I waited, every muscle tense, every sense screaming at me to move. There were no footsteps, no breath, no sound at all, only an oppressive, unnatural stillness that pressed against my skin and made my heart pound in my ears. The air on the other side of the door felt heavier and thicker, like it carried weight. Something stood there, inches away, something unseen, watching and waiting for me to do something I didn't want to do, to open it. And I knew, it knew sooner or later, curiosity or desperation would make me open the door. And when I did, it wouldn't retreat. It would come, slowly, inevitably drawing closer with every heartbeat I took. Sleep has become a rare commodity. I barely close my eyes without waking to the feeling of eyes on me. The hallway is never empty anymore. Shadows linger, thick and patient, like they're waiting for something I can't yet understand. Sometimes I wake to find it pressed against the crack of my bedroom door. Just a thin outline, but enough to make my chest tighten. I can feel it, even if I can't see it fully. Other nights, its shadow stretches across the ceiling, reaching into corners of the apartment that were never mine to begin with. It doesn't just inhabit the hallway anymore, it occupies the space around me. The entire apartment feels wrong. Each room seems to bleed into the next, filled with a darkness that shouldn't be there. Even familiar spaces feel alien, like I'm living inside a warped version of my own home. Last night, it made a sound. Not words, not speech, something else. A low, resonant noise that vibrated in my chest and made the hair on my arms stand on end, like bones grinding. A guttural, hungry sound, slow and deliberate. It wasn't playful or random. It was testing me, measuring me, and waiting for me to react. The lock on my door rattled, again, slow and deliberate, like it was communicating without words. something unseen brushing against reality and pressing at the thin barrier between me and the hallway. That's when it hit me. I'm not just sharing the hallway, I'm trapped. Every breath, every step I take is being measured. Every movement I make, it mirrors me and shifts closer. I'm the one who can't escape. Every time I open the door, it's closer than before, always creeping forward, patient but inevitable. There's no pause, no hesitation, only relentless approach. The shadows thicken around it, the air grows heavy, and the walls themselves feel alive, pulsing with the presence of something ancient. I can feel it pressing into my mind, teasing the edge of reason. And tonight, the doorframe itself was darker than I've ever seen. The threshold seems to suck in light, bending the room into a corner of impossibility. I see it now, its hand, thin and crooked, sliding past the frame as if it knows the door cannot stop it. And I know, without a shred of doubt, it won't stop until it drags me into the darkness beyond. If you've ever felt something watching you from the dark, you're not alone. Share your own story in the comments. I want to know if the shadows find you too. And hit subscribe for more stories that stay with you long after the lights go out. Because some hallways never end.